Hello, I'm Perrin, and welcome to the Business of Business. Throughout the pandemic, I will be having a series of conversations with business leaders, with government officials, with other experts with regard to how COVID-19 is affecting Canadian society and particularly Canadian business. Now, since the pandemic struck, all of us have become old hands at using Zoom, which is the technology that we're using today to put together this episode of the Business of Business. My guest today knows even more about this technology that's become part of our everyday lives. He's Harry Moseley, who's the Chief Information Officer at Zoom. He joined the company in 2018 after a long and successful career in business, which included serving as CIO and Managing Director for KPMG. Harry, welcome to the Business of Business.
Yeah, Perrin, it's great to be here. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the opportunity.
We're delighted to have you. Well, let's start with Zoom itself. 22 months ago, many of us had never heard of this company, but today it's an integral part of our businesses and of our day-to-day lives. Tell us what the pandemic has meant for the growth of the company itself.
Yeah, so it's been rather incredible. We've enjoyed seeing, supporting various different enterprises, global enterprises around the world, governments around the world, educational institutions around the world. Back in February of last year, we decided to give our software away for free to schools, K through 12 primary, secondary education. At one point, we had over 125,000 schools running on the Zoom platform in 26 countries around the world. So it's been a very humbling experience, Perrin, to be quite honest. Helping organizations function, connecting people, and it's been great.
You could not have anticipated this sort of demand, this sort of growth for the company. How has the company accommodated these demands and the amount of growth that you've seen?
Yeah, so, two parts. One is the human side and the other part is the technology. On the human side, we got an amazing team of professionals at Zoom. And today our company is over twice the size it was going into the pandemic. So we hired, sort of en masse, if you will. And a lot of people put in a lot of very long days early in the pandemic so that we could support the demand for the platform and the service. On the technology side, whilst we saw this massive growth, we maintained service levels, we maintained great relationships with our clients, and saw, bigger and more expansive global clients joining the platform, and we continue to morph it and change it. I think that, sort of quite honestly, Perrin, when I look at the growth and the utilization of the platform, it's testimony, if you will, to the technology differentiation of the Zoom platform. And that's what's been a critical part of our ability to be able to support and scale the way we have over the last 22 months and continuing to do so. So it's been great.
Harry, one of the things that is so striking to me is that none of us could have imagined the number of lockdowns there would be, the move to remote working, to distributed workforces, the extent to which we would be separating from each other. And yet this has worked remarkably well, much better, I think, than any of us would have anticipated 22 months ago. If this pandemic had happened, say, 5 years ago, would we have had the technological capacity in the world to be able to manage something like this?
I think if this had happened 5 years ago, it would have been, well, let's just look at the last 22 months. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's been great to be able to see people and share content and see those nonverbal cues. But it hasn't been a rosy time either. We've seen, a lot of families hurt and a lot of sad news around the world. Way too many people have lost their lives. And so that's been really rather terrible. If this had happened 5 years ago, it would have been, I think, dramatically worse. Can you imagine, sort of operating like this? It would have been, sort of the isolation effect. Yes, you could talk to people, but the isolation of not being able to see people would have been really very hurtful. When I think of, one of my friends, his mother-in-law is a senior citizen living alone in Dublin, Ireland, and she was isolated in her apartment, but she joined 2 Zoom sessions every day so she could see her friends in Dublin, and they would play cards together, they would tell jokes together, they would share photos of family together. So it eliminated the isolation, because isolation, can be, have a dramatic effect on people. And then, when you think about the economy and you think about commerce, not being able to conduct business could have had a dramatic effect on companies and again on people and on employment. And so it would have been, a really tough time if we had gone through a period as long as we have without being able to see and connect to people as seamlessly and as frictionlessly as we have.
One of the impacts of Zoom has been that I've had more meetings with CEOs of Canadian companies over the course of the last 22 months than I'd had in the previous 5 years. And the technology does bring us together in a very real way. But every single one of them with whom I've spoken has said that their companies won't look the same after COVID as they did before, that they've reinvented the business, they've reinvented their business plans, they've introduced new technology, new ways of working, and so on. If that's the case for their companies, I assume it applies in spades for Zoom as well. We're not yet out of the woods, but as COVID recedes, what do you see as the future for Zoom? How will it evolve, and what role will it play permanently in the economy and in society?
Well, I think it goes back to a comment that you just made, Perrin. Talking to the CEOs, their companies will never be the same. And so the way we have operated in the past, in the last 22 months, I fundamentally believe is how we're going to continue in the future. And when you go back to the past, we led by in-person meetings, and then we would augment that with video. How many times do we remember we would fly somewhere, drive somewhere, take a train somewhere? Everybody would get in an office, we'd meet, we'd greet, we'd develop relationships, and then we would say, okay, let's meet next time, we can do a video conference or something like that. The future is leading like that, leading in this virtual world, and occasionally and augmenting that with in-person sessions. So fundamentally believe that that's the way we're going to see things in the future. The big challenge that we have, Perrin, with this model, when you look at a virtual environment exclusively, it's the notion that everybody's head is the same size, right? It's like, it works for introverts and works for extroverts. There is no hierarchy in the room. You can't tell that this person is the CEO or not, right? It's and everybody's occupying the same amount of screen real estate, so to speak. And so so that makes it very inclusive, and promotes equality and allows us to collaborate. The challenge that we've got with this, Perrin, is that when you go to the hybrid model, which is where the general consensus is hybrid being, some people in the office, sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze, some people in the office 2 to 3 days a week, and some people not in the office. How do you maintain this ability to collaborate? How do you maintain this, this inclusivity and this equality? And so we've done a couple of things at Zoom to support this. We introduced what we call our smart gallery, which is leveraging artificial intelligence in the conference room to stream people who are in the conference room out to be their individual tiles to the remote participant. So the remote participant sees everybody being equal and being inclusive. We are introducing, I'm sure this will be of interest to our colleagues in Canada, introducing, machine language translation in early in 2022, where we're going to support a variety of different languages in real time to do the translation, the audio translation and the textual translation, to be, again, supporting the inclusivity and supporting equality. And we are currently testing that out, as well as testing out our persistent whiteboarding, so that you can collaborate in real time with people literally around the world. with an infinite canvas. So these are super exciting times, to be honest, and we're looking forward to embracing that.
That's an important step forward. One of the great concerns, certainly, that companies have expressed is this issue of collaboration. If you're not in the same room, if you're not constantly seeing one another, do you begin to erode the ability to be able to collaborate with one another? And even with the meetings that you and I would go to, of conferences and conventions, so very often what you gain most from is not the set piece presentations, but the discussions you have in the margins of meetings. And some of that has been lost as a result of moving to the virtual world. What you're talking about is trying to find a way of bringing that back in.
Yeah, and with that case in point, you just described the virtual events. We introduced our event platform over the summer as well, which allows you to do virtual networking at an event. So you can sort of see what's going on the main stage. You can see who's there. You can connect to the person that's there. You can actually spin up a Zoom meeting at a virtual event. So let's say you and I were at the same event and I saw you, I could like ping you and say, hey, Perrin, let's jump on a quick Zoom meeting. And literally in the event, we would be able to jump on that Zoom meeting. You and I could be seeing each other, talking to each other, and still see what's going on the main stage, so to speak, at the event. So I think that's, and I fundamentally believe, and have done for a while, even pre-pandemic, I urged a variety of different event organizers to think about having a hybrid event, because when you have a hybrid event, you can attract, speakers literally from around the world. If you're having an event in New York, you can have a speaker from Sydney, you can have a speaker from London, you can have a speaker from Hong Kong, and you can also attract an audience from around the world. So you get much more of a diverse community, you get a much more of a diverse set of speakers. You can record the event and then you can play it back and people can watch it off, sort of offline and things of that nature. So I think that many events are going to go virtual in the future. That's my expectation.
This has certainly been
go hybrid. Go hybrid in the future.
Yep.
Sorry.
Virtual has been the experience for the Canadian Chamber in the course of the past couple of years for our AGMs. And it was fascinating for us. We were concerned about how it would function, whether you could keep people in front of computer monitors for a lengthy period of time. But what we found was greater participation, that smaller chambers could afford to come without paying the cost of transportation or registration or hotels and food. And we found as well that for speakers, we were able to bring in speakers from all over, and it was an hour out of their life instead of 3 days. And so our intention is, as we move out of this, to move to hybrid.
I think that's a good move.
But I think it's doable.
Absolutely. It's like, you think about board meetings and you think about sort of like all of the time and effort to attend board meetings. Yes, it's nice to sort of get together with the board and do a board dinner and meet members of the management team of the company that you're on the board with. But do you need to do that every quarter? I don't think you need to do that every quarter. So if we chop that in half, think about all of the above. Think about sort of the effect, sort of the productivity you get. Think about the benefits you get from a, sort of a lifestyle perspective. I do not miss, racing to airports and staying in hotels. I love, having breakfast with my wife every morning, as an example. I like sleeping in my own bed. I like being here with my puppy, that type of thing. So, and think about the impact that, it has on the carbon footprint for our planet. Think about, sort of parents with young children at home. When I was earlier in my career, doing the crazy things I did, sort of, I would be in my office in Midtown Manhattan at 7 a.m. in the morning. I get home at 9 o'clock at night, and I was a weekend parent. There's no need to be a weekend parent anymore. I will never get that time back with my family. That's gone. But I think that in this virtual hybrid world, people can lead a better quality life.
Can I pursue this question of institutional culture for any organization, whether it's a business, a government organization, any other? The culture of the organization is critical to defining the way that it is. And so much of that comes from the time that you spend together one-on-one with people and in a group as well. In the virtual world, that's not so possible. You'll have experienced this yourself at Zoom as you've expanded over the course of this last while. How do you get people to feel part of an institutional culture and feel that sense of affinity that you can get when you're in person, but is more difficult when you're working remotely?
Yeah, that definitely is a serious challenge. Is the culture, the DNA of the company? How do you instill that into the new hires, or as we call it at Zoom, our Zoomies? And on a regular basis, I'm on internal calls, and a new face pops up, and without embarrassing the individual, getting a little bit of background about them, sharing a little background about yourself, and so you try to engage people into the conversation. What many people do is sort of call up new hires just at random, out of the blue, and sort of welcome them to the company. We do at Zoom, we do all hands every 2 weeks, and people get asked questions, so we are sharing the DNA of our company and the culture of our company in that fashion as well. And then we do a lot of social virtual events with people as well to get them engaged into the company, because this is Perrin, this is super important. What we're seeing here in the US as an example is this great resignation. In August, 4 million people resigned from their jobs. In September, 4.4 million people resigned from their jobs. And because and as I was talking to somebody else this morning, they were highlighting the fact that it's so much easier for people to resign now than ever before. It's also much easier for people to find a new job than ever before, because there are more jobs than there are people. And when people went into the office, they had to, quote, sneak out to go for that interview. But if they're working from anywhere, they don't have to sneak out to go for that interview. They can just do it. There's been a lot of learnings over the last 22 months. Learning how to lead and manage in this virtual environment has been a big one. We've sort of in the pre-pandemic world, we led and managed by managing the people in the office, but that's gone away. So it's not about leading and managing people, it's about leading and managing outcomes. And there was a study done by the Future Forum, which is a Slack-led initiative, and they did a survey of 10,000 knowledge workers between Europe, US, and Asia Pacific. And they found that 57% of the respondents said they were going to look for a new job in the next 12 months. 76% of the respondents said that they wanted flexibility about where they worked. And 93% said they wanted flexibility about when they worked. So where we're going, Perrin, is going to be this era of flexibility, where employees really want the flexibility about where and when they work, and to some degree, in many cases, even what they work on. So the purpose of the company is going to become really important. And last point is that many companies have been sort of looking at this cultural effect of people not being in the office, looking at, well, what does the hybrid model really mean? And what they've got, so general consensus is that the office is a place where people will come together to work together, work out, ideas, sort of creation, creativity, brainstorming, create new products, new services. It's not necessarily a place where people will go to work, but they'll use it as a place to bring people together, to connect with each other, and then they can go anywhere to get their work done.
Harry, can we talk for a minute about the technology itself? You're a CIO, you know that for CIOs, they look first of all at the utility of the technology that they're bringing in, but the issue of confidentiality and of security also ranks high. Can you tell us about measures that you've built into the platform to ensure that both confidentiality and security are maintained on Zoom?
Yeah, so we've taken a lot of activities over the last 22 months. Privacy and security is top of mind. And, as an example, sort of if you go to the top left of the screen, you can see the little green shield up there. You can ping that. You can see, sort of how this meeting has been protected. You can see how, what level of encryption you have and things of that nature. We have multiple external parties reviewing our code, reviewing our protocols, and constantly sort of testing and multiple layers of defense for the platform, because our reputation is everything. When you've got the likes of the clients that we do with 7 of the top 10 investment banks in the world on our platform, many different financial services transactions going through our platform. You've got healthcare transactions, healthcare clients, etc. You think about all the different industries and commerce being done on the Zoom platform. Privacy and security is paramount, and we've instituted numerous new controls on the platform to enhance that the quality of that privacy and security, and that's part of our DNA as well.
Many companies specify what platforms can be used by their employees, and in some cases refuse to allow software from other companies to be downloaded. Is there an external rating body of some sort that looks at the security and privacy of the various platforms, and that would help businesses to be able to evaluate whether or not they're on a platform that's secure?
Yeah, there's well, first off, so some companies do that so because they don't want the technology sprawl. So they want to limit the number of different services that they have to support. So that's one reason. The other reason is clearly around privacy and security, and there are external companies that will rate the quality of privacy and security and of different platforms out there. So there's a number of companies that actually do that.
When we're looking at these technologies, if I can pick your brain on your role as CIO, what sort of criteria should companies be looking at as they're looking at deploying new technologies like this? Is there some sort of a checklist that they should follow, or are there best practices in terms of trying to determine what types of technology to look at, in what instances you should be reorganizing the very structure of your organization around the technology, and how you should roll these out?
Yeah, so there's, when companies are evaluating technologies, tools, platforms, they have a bunch of different criteria they're going to look at. They're going to look at the technology, they're going to look at the quality of the product, they'll look at the DNA of the leadership and things of that nature. Obviously, sort of pricing comes into play, newness comes into play. You don't want to take your business and run it on some, run it on a platform that, being built by 2 guys in a garage. That won't work very well. That being said, sort of some of the most creative minds are, sort of working out of the garage. If you look at Dell Computer, where that got started from, as an example, every company starts somewhere like that. So what I've seen over the last couple of years is the most important criteria is something that we call Net Promoter Score, which is sort of that's an independent rating from consumers, so to speak, people who are using the technology in terms of their level of satisfaction and level of the quality. And it sort of brings together sort of like performance, quality, ease of use, features, etc. That's all sort of connected as part of that Net Promoter Score. So that's something that's really important. The other thing that's become more apparent than ever before is employee satisfaction. Now, every company, as I'm sure Perrin, you'd agree, has always been focused on client satisfaction. Because clients talk to each other, clients will do reference calls against each other. So client satisfaction has always been front of mind, right? Employee satisfaction is now an equal peer to that, because as we mentioned before, the Great Resignation is on, and people want flexibility, etc. So if you're not providing a great experience for your employees, then your employee satisfaction is going to suffer, your turnover is going to suffer. And so as when you're selecting tools, you've really got to listen to your audience. If I go back 20 years earlier in my career, that wasn't as important. It's kind of like, here's the technology and you're just going to love it. And even if you don't, you're going to love it. So you'll learn how to ride that bike. In today's world, it's not so easy to do that. So and then another thing to think about, Perrin, is what works for one organization might not necessarily work for another organization. And what do I mean by that? So if you think about like the finance organization predominantly will be working inside of a company. They have very little external access. They do talk to investors and things of that nature. They might talk to the banks and what have you. But the dominant part of their work is sort of internal to the company. Let's go to the revenue side. Now, the revenue side, the dominant part of the revenue side is working externally with the clients. And so, that's got to be a seamless and frictionless experience. So, and they do, obviously work with people inside the company too. So what might work for finance might not work for the revenue side. What might work for the revenue side might not work for finance. So these are, things that people really need to be focused on in terms of making sure that they select the right tool for the right dynamics of the right organization. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Harry, about 98% of the businesses in Canada are SMEs. What does this technology mean for small and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, so we scale to the largest companies in the world, but we also support the individuals and the SMB business equally well. And what's super important, when you get into the SMB world, is the ease of use, the ease of deployment, the ease of support, the ease of maintenance, etc. And there's a reason people say Zoom, it just works. It's easy to deploy, it's easy to maintain, it's easy to support. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't need additional tools. We are platform agnostic. We work equally well on whether it's an iOS device or an Android device or a Windows device or an Apple laptop, etc. Work well in the as a web client as well. So it's we're industry agnostic. So because a small medium business doesn't have a big technology organization behind it to support these tools, and so this is something that we've been very focused on right from the get-go.
Final question. We talked a few minutes ago about how the company and how the industry has evolved over the course of the last 5 years. 5 years from now, what do you think Zoom will look like, and how will the sector have evolved?
Yeah, when I think about sort of where do we go from here? Broadly speaking, when you look at technologies like artificial intelligence and augmented reality and virtual reality and machine learning, IoT, we're barely scratching the surface in terms of how we're using those technologies today. So as we go forward, Perrin, there's going to be great new innovations. The ability, I've got a cup of coffee here. It'd be great if you could smell the coffee, right? It'd be great if we could physically shake hands. It'd be great if you could do a bear hug, right? And And so I fundamentally believe that, you know, this, whilst the pandemic has clearly accelerated the trajectory that we were already on, I believe that now we're poised for, you know, sort of incredible innovations as we go forward. And, you know, if I had one wish, it would be that I could go back 20 years in my career and have the capabilities we have now, because I've always had fun in my career, and now it would even be more fun. So it's going to be really cool.
Harry, we live in exciting times, a period of enormous change, and the pace of change is only going to accelerate in the future. We're so grateful to you for being with us today, and thank you for the service that Zoom supplies the Canadian business community. It's something that has been absolutely critical to both business and society itself over the course of the last 22 months. Thanks so much for being here.